Hello and welcome back to Venus Rising. I'm your host, Callie Fell. Today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Jennifer Bilek. She is an artist, activist, and investigative journalist, as well as receiving many awards for her portraiture. Her journalism has been featured in Tablet Magazine, First Things, The Post-Millennial, and other publications. She writes about the intersections of unfettered corporatism, technology, and the gender industry in her blog, The 11th Hour. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking time to join us on Venus Rising today.
I am very happy to be here, Callie. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we were just talking before we went on air that it's been like 3 years since we met in New York City, and a lot has happened since then. So what have you been up to? Well, you know what? Let's back up a little bit. What got you started in investigative journalism, and what motivates your writings?
Well, I'm an artist, and the creativity sort of emerges in whatever I touch. So I'm like really, really blessed in that way. And I also am a very political animal. And so my writing has emerged out of my activism for women's rights, for the preservation of our planet, and now the gender industry. So basically that's how it sort of came about. And I've just been because I see this issue of paramount importance, not that the other things that I haven't worked for are not of paramount importance, but this is really what I consider a life and death issue for humanity. So it's really kind of consumed me in the past, I'd say almost a decade now.
Yeah.
And I started writing about it. I'm sorry?
When you say this, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the gender?
The gender industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it seems like women's rights is very much enmeshed, or at least from my perspective, in trans ideology.
Yes.
So it seems like you're kind of killing two birds with one stone when you kind of investigate.
Exactly. Well, that's how it sort of went along those lines, from being a women's rights advocate and activist to focusing on the environment, because women are really a stand-in for nature, because we reproduce the species. And then it went into the gender industry, because really the gender industry, and it is an industry, it's market driven, and it's based on deconstructing women's reproductive capacities for the market, for the consumerist market. Mm-hmm. So it's evolved from a fetish of adult men who covet women's biology for themselves, into an industry that actually steals that biology and transfers it to the tech sector. Like, ever since the medical industrial complex became involved in women's reproduction, the birthing process, that used to be a women's domain. Women used to help women give birth, right? Until the techno-medical complex came in there and took over. And so since they did, the rise in their intrusion into women's reproduction has just escalated over the years with the advancements of technology and biotechnology. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons this industry is sitting under a banner of human rights for same-sex attracted individuals. First of all, it opens markets in sexual identity, and you can't have that unless you break the sex boundary between male and female. Otherwise, you just have lesbian, gay, bisexual, and heterosexual, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to break that boundary in order to get more sexual identities out of it. But also, what's even more imperative is that it's sitting under this human rights umbrella to deconstruct sex, and give it the veneer of a human rights movement.
Like what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? So our listeners might say, okay, so why can't we deconstruct sex? Like, what does it matter to me what a man or woman does with his body if he wants to be a woman? Why is that a problem in your opinion?
Well, because sex is what connects us to the biosphere. It connects us to everything else on the planet. It connects us to reality. You know, like if you have a nose job, or you get a tattoo, or you get like horns implanted into your head. I mean, I've seen all sorts of crap. In the body mod genre, but none of those things connect us to the biosphere. Sex connects us to the biosphere, and this is a techno-medical complex deconstruction. It's driving us towards transhumanism. Really, it's a bridge towards transhumanism, where we are more integrally melded with biotechnology and technology.
Yeah.
And in order to circumvent death, to live immortally. I mean, that's like the long-term goal, but they're really driving this pretty fast. So through the culture. So, I mean, that's why I call it life or death, because, humanity as we know it has already changed so much with the advent of greater systems of technology. I mean, and we've grown closer and closer to our technology and further away from connection with each other and the living planet. So
yeah,
this is just they're escalating it, and this is one of the reasons they want to move, reproduction to the tech sector, not just for profiteering, because it is very profitable. We're much more profitable as parts than we are as whole integral human beings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but also
it's interesting that you talk about, being disconnected from, each other and the world, because when I talk to detransitioners, they talk about advice that they give is get offline, get back outside, enjoy being outside, reconnect with other people off of being online, and reconnect with nature. And I think you're hitting on something there.
Well, the internet wasn't really developed as, as a means for us to have like a big coffee house with the world. It was actually developed by the military for spying on people. And it's used now to control us and manipulate us. And it's doing a very good job of that, I mean, of course, it has good elements too. Most of our tech does. Right. But, people, the 99% of us, not the ruling elite, don't really get to make decisions about that technology and where it's going to go. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And we entered this space, the Center for Bioethics and Culture, because of what you're talking about, how tech has kind of invaded the reproduction and women's body parts. Like, it's, for the last, more than 20 years, but, we've been selling women's eggs, we've been renting their wombs, kind of deconstructing the woman. And yeah, there's a big profit to be made when you deconstruct, but that's kind of how we entered the space of transgender ideology, because they start offering kids, fertility preservation before they go through transitioning. And I'm using air quotes a lot here because sometimes it can be hard to talk about these things without using their terms. But so you've done a lot of work in the last few years since we've last spoken about kind of investigating the profit behind all of this. Do you want to talk about your research there and what you found or what you've done?
Sure. I mean, it's a pretty vast, it's like an octopus.
Sure.
So if you want to focus on one thing, that might be helpful.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how this maybe in kids, trans medicine in kids, why we've all of a sudden seen this huge boom, and who's to profit from this? Why do we see this such a large group
Well,
of.
I mean, people are looking at this situation because they've been told it's a human rights movement. That's the framework that they have in their mind. And for the past decade, that's been like sort of like a chant, like it's an indoctrinating chant. This is a human rights movement. Trans rights are human rights. Blah, 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 blah. It's human rights, human rights, human rights. It's not a human right to, first of all, objectify and co-opt the sexed body parts of the opposite sex. That is the epitome of sexual objectification. Treating another human being as if they are parts to consume.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah, seriously. But it's not a human rights movement. It's an industry. It comes from the top down. The most wealthy people in the world are driving this ideology into our institutions and into our corporations and into our political apparatus. And at this point, the LGB of yore is not really, it has nothing to do with what's going on now. Now they're a front with the addition of T, plus they're a front for the techno-medical complex. Now, that doesn't mean that every person within the LGBT network, is thinking about this or working off of this ethos. They're just going along because they, like everybody else, have been told this is a human rights movement. And this transgenderism, which is really, it's a kind of a meaningless word because it doesn't have any borders to it. It's an umbrella term that has, it has fetishes under there. It has the resistance to sex role stereotypes under there. It has the embracing of sex role stereotypes under there. It appropriates words and terms from other cultures, from other times, for feminine men. There's a bunch of things under there that conflict with each other, and it's just nonsensical. It doesn't mean anything. Just like sort of gender identity, it does not mean anything coherent. You can't get a coherent definition out of anybody that's not tautological when you ask them what they're talking about. Yeah. But everybody's just embracing it because they've been told to embrace it. The powers that be, the internet told us, the TV told us, Hollywood is telling us, everybody told us that
our teachers are telling us,
and our teachers are telling us.
Yeah.
And, so the whole concept of bringing children into this is, first of all, you're sterilizing, a whole bunch of children, in a single generation that are not going to be able to procreate without assisted fertility. Right? Without freezing their eggs or buying women, and this is under a banner of LGB, who are also people that will not be able to procreate without technological reproduction, assisted fertility, right? So I forgot where I was going with that.
Just that it's under the whole banner. We've all been told to buy into this as a human rights issue, and
right. So, and you're sterilizing all these children, and you're also cultivating children even more so than, like, say, my generation are far more entrenched in technology with their games and the media that they watch. And I mean, kids today, you take away their phone or their internet, access, and they just, they melt down. They melt down because this is their reality. And there's so many different platforms that they can go on that are sending them, that are over-sexualizing them, and sending them sexual messages constantly. I mean, an 11-year-old boy can just open up his phone, type in porn, and what he's going to get is not going to be what what porn initially started out as.
Yeah.
It's going to be degrading, horrible images of women being sexually assaulted, basically for profit. And this is his sexual education, and he's going to transfer that to girls. And now girls are also watching all that, right? Plus they're watching this dissociating concept of transgenderism, whereby you sexually dissociate from your sex reality. all over their internet. It's being played over and over and over and over again. And these gender surgeons, whatever the hell that is, they're eugenicists. This is a eugenicist movement. Eugenicism is still here. It's just taken on a new form. Transhumanism seeks to meld us and change us as a species, and to force that change through technology and biotechnology, right?
So for listeners who maybe this is a new word, transhuman, like wait a second, back up. What are you talking about? What's like a really brief, dumbed down kind of definition or idea of what this is? What is this concept?
Well, its premise is basically the subordination of nature, of reality itself, and to go beyond our borders as a species. What gives us our borders is sex. So to go beyond that as a species and meld us more with technology, so that we don't need, to have sex, in order to reproduce, which is also another reason why why children are being accosted with these messages of sex, because they want to, sort of engineer them and indoctrinate them away from intimacy and using, having sex as an intimate connection. And so I don't know where I was going with that thought, but
well, I was just thinking about when you were saying this, about how we are even, I know the research has been done in lambs or sheep, I believe, where we're making like artificial wombs so that we can raise up, babies outside. Like we won't even need, wombs of a woman, because we can just create them outside. We can create the embryo in a lab, and then we can put that embryo into an artificial womb. And that's kind of what I was thinking when you were saying this. I don't know if that's
well, that's part of the assisted fertility market, taking it away from humans and putting it in the tech, in the tech sector. They're growing human brains in petri dishes now.
Mm-hmm.
This is you'd have to be, if you Google transhumanism, there's about 6 million hits. So it's not like nobody's talking about this or nobody knows about this. There's articles all over the place about this. There's essays, there's courses, there's term papers, there's doctoral theses, all on transhumanism. But people aren't making the connection from transgenderism to transhumanism.
Mm-hmm.
But the author of the first gender bill, the very, very first transgender bill, Martine Rothblatt, was engaged in transvestic fetishism before he identified as a transsexual and had, medical operations for his body to appropriate female sex. But in the late 1980s, he got together with a group of other transvestic lawyers, and they created a framework for legal disembodiment, to give disembodiment and disassociation from the sexed reality, legal structure. And he authored the very first gender bill, which you now see in all these different countries, in Scotland and Ireland, Australia and Canada and America, all across the Western world. You have these gender bills that have entered the society at the same time to rearrange it. Now, if you know anything about human rights movements don't function like this. They don't get, hordes of money from the wealthiest people in society, and to drive their ideology into the culture. It comes up to fight those entities, to fight corporatism, and to fight, elites, right? And their engineering of society. But this is coming from them. So you have to look again. It's not human rights. This is industry. We are profiting off the mutilation of children, experimentation on children's sex. Now there's another body dysphoria that would, where the people that have this body dysphoria seek to have, a body part removed. and it's called body identity integrity disorder, right? It's usually a lower limb, a lower extremity, right? And these people feel completely consumed with this compulsion to get rid of this limb, like it doesn't belong to them. The language of this disorder very much mirrors what is being called gender dysphoria or sex dysphoria, right? But we don't have any parades for these people. We don't have any magazine covers. There's no people in Hollywood that are starring in movies as, you know, BID characters. You know, there are no laws being changed for these people. And there's a reason for that, because our limbs don't connect us to the biosphere. We're being engineered toward more and more fusion with technology and virtual systems of reality that are overlaid on the biosphere. And children, the next generation, this is really paramount for them to divorce them from, first of all, history, reality, their families, the land, and each other, right? And this is how we get to, and also, you know, Martine Rothblatt, not only being the engineer of this document that gave birth to all these other gender bills, he's also written a blueprint for what we're living right now, which is called From Transgenderism to Transhumanism. And he discusses all of this. And he's also a very strong presence at Outright Leadership, the business networking arm of the LGBT lobby, now T. And he goes around and he lectures about this. He's also written a book about virtual reality, and he's written a book about giving over reproduction to the tech sector and what that all means and how they're going to do it. And I mean, he's basically told us what he's doing, you know, and he's very well renowned in the political, in the higher echelons of politics and business and technology. You have Yuval Harari at the WEF Forum, you know, Klaus Schwab's right-hand man, World Economic Forum's WEF, talking about, now this guy has written a gazillion books. He's considered one of our, you know, most prominent intellectuals. And he's always talking about transhumanism and virtual realities and moving us into, you know, beyond human space, right? So this is something that is, you know, it's being talked about, it's being reported on, it's just not being connected to the gender industry. But this is where all of this goes. It's a market-driven industry in deconstructing sex. Not only legally, not only linguistically, but in reality, deconstructing sex and giving it over to the tech sector.
So I have two follow-up questions to that, because I think I get asked this a lot. Because the transgender movement is pushed as a human rights movement, and we're seeing it integrate into everything, schools, medicine, and folks are having to take courses, right, on making sure we use the right pronouns and being, you know, sensitive and yada, yada, yada. How can folks in those situations, so say we have a provider, a doctor, a nurse, lactation consultant, who knows, who's in this role and is being pushed this indoctrination, but doesn't buy it, how can they navigate this world without just, you know, being canceled completely or losing their job? Is there a way to do that? And then my second question is, where can people go to find good information on this? Because like you said, there's 6 million hits. Even if, you know, when I Google, you know, transgender, whatever, it's always this positive stuff, right? How can I go, not that it has to be negative, but where can we go to find truth on these things? So those are my two questions.
Well, you know, I write about this at the 11th Hour blog. This is all I write about at the 11th Hour blog. And the power behind the gender industry. You know, who's driving it? Who are the moneyed people behind this, and what are their moneyed interests aside this LGB human rights, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it all leads back to, you know, melding us more with technology and the assisted fertility market, which takes reproduction away from women and transfers it to the tech sector. I could say that another dozen times, and I think it's probably a good idea. I'm going to keep saying it.
I hope you do.
What's going on? And you know, this is why women specifically are being erased in language and law. It's not so much about their rights, you know, or their spaces. It's about deconstructing us, literally.
Yeah.
You know, young women are the highest demographic now of people that are having their genitalia medically assaulted. This started out as a fetish of adult men. And now, just a hop, skip, and a jump later, now the highest demographic of people having their sex medically assaulted are young women.
Mm-hmm.
This is an extension of the sex industry. It's actually the pinnacle of the sex industry. And if we don't get, you know, if we don't stop this now, well, all bets are off. You know, they're coming after our DNA and our genetic codes. You know, this opens the door for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're entering a whole new age of humanity. We've gone from the digital age to the biotechnology age and data age, you know, manipulation of our genes. This is all happening simultaneously. It's just that people aren't looking at it like that because they haven't been given this information, you know. I mean, I tweet all the time about it, and I have my blog, but it's a very, very small platform. And I try to encourage people to talk, and I have been for so many years, and people are starting to talk about, you know, the pharma aspect of this. You know, this is very profitable for big pharma. Obviously, you know, you're creating lifelong medical patients, but this is a $10.7 trillion industry, the medical industry. It's bigger than the medical and than the armed services. You know, it's bigger than that. So, you know, this is a beast that needs to be fed. And certainly creating lifelong medical patients are definitely very, very profitable. Mm-hmm. But this goes beyond the medical industry. All our financial institutions, the largest financial institutions, think BlackRock and Vanguard, they're all investing in this. Why would they do this simultaneously across all Western countries in the same exact way? Because there are some people that have a disorder where they're confused about their sex. And why would it be marketed? I mean, you wouldn't take an anorexic and say, yeah, you know, let's throw you a parade. Let's give you a modeling agency. Some modeling agencies. Right. But you know what I mean? They don't frame it as a positive, as a lifestyle choice. This is like a lifestyle choice they're promoting.
Yeah.
Just, you know, identify how you want to identify, you know? And the language over the course of a decade has really shifted from these poor children with body dysphoria. We have to help them to express yourself, cut off your tits, you know, express yourself, get a fake penis, you know, express yourself. You're cool and edgy if you do this, if you have this gender identity that I mean, I know I'm a little much to bear at times, but you know, people have really got to wake up out of their coma, man.
Yeah.
They really, really do. This is bad. This is really bad. And it's big, it's gigantic. You know, the political apparatus behind this, because it's driven by the techno-medical industrial complex. You know, and it's hard because it's got the backing and the power of that.
Yeah. And it's hard because of language, right? Language is so important. And the way that it's framed, going back to assisted reproduction, it's framed always in a way that this poor family can't get pregnant. This, they really
Right,
want to be, and
right,
it's framed, and we forget about the fact that, like, bottom line, you're buying parts from another woman, and it
right.
comes with risks, and it comes with,
Bingo,
and
bingo.
so, and I try to tell that to people, like, yes, like, don't get me wrong, like, those who struggle with infertility, people who can't have kids, obviously, like, my heart breaks for them, but it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it okay that we profit off of other people.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. And I'm
um,
being very sarcastic when I say, these poor children with body
right,
dysphoria. I'm talking about the elites that are driving this crap into the culture. I'm not talking about these children. I mean, I'm sure these children are suffering, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
even though it's a mental condition, it's suffering, and it's a horrible, horrible thing that they're being indoctrinated into this. They're being encouraged to feel this way
right.
and
Instead
to
of
think this
getting the
way.
care that they need, right? And one of the detransitioners we talked with last season, Rachel, that's like her big driving point is, I could have gotten really good care and saved myself all of this mutilation if someone would have just given her the care she needed, because she had mental anguish, she had other things going on, and
Or the culture
instead,
that she needs, where that has real rituals, that has
right,
real connection,
right,
you know? Um,
yeah,
and I hate the word detransitioner too, because it really doesn't suffice to describe what's happening here. This
yeah,
is a techno medical assault, sexual assault on children. This is eugenics. They are trying to engineer us into what they see as a more progressive um, state of being.
hmm. So again, my question: how do people push back? What is a reasonable way that, because we all can't just quit our jobs and get like, what is, what
Well,
you
you
have
have to
to,
organize behind the scenes. You have to organize with other people, or do something on your own. There's Billboard Chris, he's pretty
yeah,
famous
he's
on Twitter.
awesome.
I mean, I don't know how famous he is in any other parts of society, but he's getting airtime on different media platforms.
Yeah,
Um, and he started out being one person, going around the billboard talking to people. Now, it wouldn't work for everybody to do that. I mean, he has sort of this preternatural calm about him.
right.
That's sort of, no matter what anybody says, he's really calm, and he just answers with a really rational answer, which is very cool. And he wears a billboard, so he's called Billboard Chris. Now this is genius. This is genius because we're being censored, and we have to talk to each other.
Yeah,
We absolutely have to talk to each other. I was talking to somebody the other night who was in the Anaheim conference in California, outside what was it, the AAP, I think it was.
yeah, I think so. The Do No
Yeah.
Harm event.
The what?
Do No Harm. I think that's what they're.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And she, she had some pamphlets, and she was handing them out to pediatricians, and she was saying, hey, look, there are other pediatricians out there, that are disagreeing with this ideology. And I wonder why you don't say anything. Like, are you being manipulated to not say anything? Are you being threatened to not say anything? And one out of these many, many physicians that were running into this conference with their heads down, amongst this big, big protest of parents and a whole bunch of people from different aspects of politics and activists and just concerned grandparents and everybody. It was a wide mix of people. And he's kind of said yes, and she went after him. She was like, well, hey, you just rolled your head yes, what's going on, and he was like, well, I can't tell you what my name is or where I live, but yeah, this, basically people are being threatened into this.
Wow.
And yeah, so the fact that this guy goes out there and he talks to people and gives them information, voice to voice, face to face, is imperative. It was a genius move. It's working. It's giving him a lot of airtime that other people aren't getting. He's using it to very good effect. aside from the fact that he hates feminists, which is ridiculous, he kind of blames feminists for this, as do many men on the right.
Yeah. It's been feminists all along who've been trying to say, hey, this isn't okay.
I know.
It
is.
We have to work together.
But
that aside, we do need to work together, right? Like we need a coalition. Like we can't bicker about those things. We need to.
You got to table the other issues. Table the other issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Come together. It's really, really hard in some ways.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. I mean, I listen to Matt Walsh. I really disagree with Matt Walsh in so many ways. He made a great movie. He's getting a lot of airtime with it. He's funny. Thank God he's funny. Somebody's funny. You know what I mean? Somebody besides Tucker Carlson is funny. Yes. We need this. We need funny. If you're funny, make fun of this. I mean, people are making cartoons about it. Make cartoons about it. But get in the streets. Don't do it all over the internet. Do some of it on the internet, but get out into the streets. Posey Parker's over there in the UK. She started a whole movement standing for women, right? And they give themselves, they take a platform every month and they go into the speaker's corner. They make a corner where people can speak, women can speak. Any women across the board, right, left, whoever, and they can speak about this issue or, women's rights. Now, this is brilliant because it takes the power away from the mainstream media, which is totally in bed with big pharma.
Yeah.
People aren't reading Glamour magazine. They're not reading, give me some names of some other magazines.
17,
Elite, Cosmopolitan, Sports Illustrated. They're not reading those magazines. They're reading the propaganda of the corporate state, coming all the way down from the biggest financial institutions in the world. Vanguard and BlackRock are sending that message. I had a partner once whose brother worked at NBC. This was years ago. This was like back in the 80s, I think. And he said to get one line of the material that was going out on the air changed, you had to go through such a what do you call it? A hierarchy of people to get this, even one line changed of this dialogue that was going out on the air that night, that it was barely even worth it to do it.
Right. Oh, wow.
So the message is so controlled and it goes out the same way on all the platforms. Vogue, Elite, Cosmopolitan, blah, blah, blah. They're all sending the same message: positive lifestyle choice, transgenderism, positive lifestyle choice. It's a human right. It's a human right. It's a human right. There's no differentiation. This is corporate hegemony.
And if they really understood the fact that, we're writing the book, The Detransition Diary, Saving Our Sisters. It's coming out as a book. I'm writing it right now. And I'm in the chapter about the harms. And if people really understood that this is not body positivity, these are people who are medicalized for life. They often have, if they go forward with surgeries, they have infections, the rates of having re-surgery after, reoperation, and then the hormones. I mean, once you have put yourself in menopause, and then if you decide you don't want to be masquerading as the opposite sex, you still have to take replacement therapy, or you might not, but that's not taking care of yourself. You're putting yourself at higher risks for stroke, for pulmonary embolism. That's not being your best self. That is making yourself a diseased state, and I don't think people understand that.
And you're going to need assisted reproductive technologies, right? You have Jeff Bezos. He used to be the richest man in the world until he was topped by, I think it was Elon Musk, right?
I think so.
Who is selling hormones on his Amazon platform? Who's got a fertility platform on Amazon now, and he's invested in gender clinics, specifically one in Brooklyn. He donated $166 million. His ex-wife what's her name now? Mackenzie Scott. Is it Mackenzie Scott?
I don't know. I'm not up
I
on
think
it.
it's Mackenzie Scott. His ex-wife is flooding the LGBT organizations. Now, again, they are just, at this point, they are just a front for the techno-medical complex. Arcus Foundation, the largest and most prominent and most probably influential LGBT, which used to be LGB, but is now LGBT organization in the world, housed in America. This is its home base, with an alternate base in the UK. Is the founder of that is the heir to Stryker Medical Corporation, right? So, and that's, you know, there's 100 countries across the world that are using Stryker medical supplies. They have a base in like 54 different countries, I think it is, or maybe it's 34. I'm sorry, the numbers just like escaped me, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. Many, and which are bringing in revenue for those countries, right? And he's marketing this ideology and building the political scaffolding behind the scenes for it by funding all these other organizations, LGBT organizations, churches, sports organizations, the media, blah, 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 you know, across the board, you know, funding them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to take on this ideology. If you don't take on the ideology, no more funding for you.
Mm-hmm.
So don't you think that's just a wee bit of a conflict of interest?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's, you know, he's selling this as a human right.
Mm-hmm.
And helping drive the, you know, helping create the political infrastructure to do that, you know. Some of it was there already. I mean, these centers for LGB were already, you know, there because of the AIDS crisis, right? And the techno-medical complex was already involved in this human rights organization, which was at that point still a human rights organization. But the medical industrial complex swoops right in once this AIDS crisis happened, because people needed help. They needed information. They needed medicine. They needed help from the techno-medical complex. The techno-medical complex never met. They never left. They're still there. And now these organizations are just a front for them. And like I said, probably most of the people don't understand what it is that they're supporting.
Yeah.
They just think it's, you know, it's nice to be nice to people.
Right. They think, you know, what's the harm? Someone's living their best life. Let them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't see the whole deconstruction process, you know, underway. And, you know, I mean, I'm an artist, I'm a painter, so I see patterns, you know, that's what I'm trained to do. So you know, when I started investigating and I saw all this money and I saw, you know, the Pritzkers and the Rothblatt and Soros and John Stryker, you know, and all these names kept repeating over and over and over again. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
You know?
You're seeing the pattern, just like in art.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have a wealth of information. Like, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. And I'm hoping the next time I'm in New York, we can meet up again. But where can people find you? What's your Twitter handle? Where can we find your 11th hour blog? Where can people just kind of, maybe now they've woken up a little bit after listening to you and they want to find out more. Where can they go? Where can you direct them?
Go to the 11thhourblog.com. The 11th is numerical.
Okay.
And just go and see, you know, go and see what I'm writing about. I mean, I have all the receipts. It's not like I'm just talking through my, you know, through my nose.
Yeah.
You know?
And what's your Twitter handle?
Well, I have two Twitter handles actually, BJ Portraits, at BJ Portraits, or at 11th blog.
Okay.
And I have a Substack, and I'm on Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, we'll include all those links in our show description, so people can find you, because it is fascinating and it's an important thing for us to look at and to evaluate. And I'm glad that you've done the work to do that. And I actually
Thanks, Kelly.
Of course. I'm excited to go look at your artwork. I don't think I realized that you were an artist. I don't know why I didn't realize that, but I'm excited to go look at your portraits and check out your artwork. But our time is coming to an end. And is there anything else you'd like to add? And I just want to thank you again for coming on our show and taking time today to talk with me.
I want to tell people that, find another person who thinks like you are. Stop trying to convert people that are fully indoctrinated. Find somebody who doesn't have information and give them information. Don't waste your time, because time is precious. Time is of the essence here. We are in the 11th hour, and probably 59 seconds. And we need to move. We need to organize. Find somebody else and do something. If you want to work alone, work to your assets. What are your strengths? If you're in media, if you write, if you create, if you're an artist, make some cartoons or make some, whatever it is, use your skills, use your passions to resist this takeover, basically, of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we can do this, but we have to come together, get over your differences, put them to the back burner and organize and work together. Because the more we bicker and bicker between ourselves and stop, we don't look up to where it's coming from. We look at each other. Oh, it's the left. Oh, it's the right. Oh, it's the Marxists. It's the socialists. It's the feminists. It's queer theory. It's critical race theory. Oh, and all those very, very powerful movements and analyses have been co-opted by the corporate state to create a hegemony, of thought.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. We do. And I see lots of, Reality Girl Zine. She does artwork on it, and it's brilliant. She actually did artwork for our documentary. And so use your talents. I think that's very wise advice. Again, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on.
It was really a pleasure, Callie.
Yes,
really. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I want to thank all of our listeners for listening in. Our goal, as ever, is to create conversation, facilitate discussions, and encourage everyone to think beyond the masses. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Callie Phil.